Wow. Welcome to the very first meeting of this particular class. Let's take a look at some stuff here. I'm going to first. I'm going to take a couple of minutes to talk to you about what it would be like if this is your first online class, and so bear with me if you already understand how that all works, and then I will be going back to talking specifically about this particular class. So let me share everything. You know how this works if you've done this before. Okay, so let's start here. This should be similar to how yours looks, although you are not going to have this pink bar like I do. So if this is your first time using Canvas online, and we switched from Blackboard to Canvas not too long ago, and so if this is your first time using it, a couple tips. Notice that you have two separate toolbars here, right? So this toolbar talks about, or it talks through anything that is included anywhere on Canvas. This second toolbar is just to this particular class that you're talking about. So keep that in mind that you go back and forth. Now, I'm going to start you off by taking a look at a couple of these things that apply to everything. So obviously, if you clicked on courses, you're going to see the courses that you currently have. So for me this summer, I only have one class I'm teaching at the moment. It's going to be this one, research writing. You may have more than that if you are taking multiple classes. If you are going to take a look at the calendar. So this is a calendar option. Some people really love this calendar option, and I want to show you some of the pros and cons to the calendar so that you don't get lost. So the calendar, some people like to go directly to the calendar because as you can see, and by the way, I have up here, these are color coded. So I have research writing as green. You might change that color to anything you want. And if you have multiple classes, you might see that there are multiple classes listed here, and you can make the colors different so that it shows up on the calendar differently. You can also take and unclick a class so that you can see only one at a time or two at a time, right? So you can get a feel for what does my week look like. So this is a good visual, so you can see everything that is due and when it's due. And you can see, oh, I have a lot of things due on Thursdays and on Sundays for this class. So that means I have to figure out how to make that work, right? Now, the other thing that's cool is like this is today. So you can actually go here and click on it and see Research Writing Conference week 1 right now. It's happening. Yay. Let's go ahead to the next thing that's due. I can see that on Thursday I have a discussion, a journal 1 and a journal 2. I can actually go and click on it and access it directly from right here. Now, this is fantastic, except, so if you are one of those students that likes to do it this way, and you like to see your assignments, the only thing that are on the calendar are the assignments with due dates, which means if you're going only here or here first, you are not seeing all the preparatory material that comes prior to these assignments. All right, so although you can access these assignments here, right, which is fantastic, you're missing stuff. So in order to know what you're doing, you first also have to go back to the courses themselves. So in our case, English 2322. Here's our page, right? So here's how we would start. You could start in a number of ways. You can start by going down here and clicking on these by the modules, getting started, module 1, and so on. And you can see that the first one is right beneath it. You can also go over here to where it says modules. Okay, so you can see assignments, modules, all of these things, you can access them right here. Make sure that in some way you either click on the modules or you click on that button, because this is where you're going to see everything. And if you don't click this, you don't see everything, which means you don't see the readings that you have to read before you take the quizzes. You see, like by going to the calendar, you might see a quiz, but you don't see the information about what you're supposed to read before the quiz. So that's a problem. So notice that in this first getting started section, which you should actually start with, you will meet your professor. That's me. Hi. You'll meet your classmates. You'll learn about Tech Live. And of course, there is a course preparation quiz. You need to take the course preparation quiz first. that is the thing that will keep you from getting kicked out of the course. So if you were live, we would take a registration, we would take attendance, right? You're here, we know you're interacting. On online ways, the only way that we know that you are interacting with the course is by taking this course preparation quiz. So if you don't take it, they will automatically bump you out of the course. So we don't want that, right? So make sure that you do take this course preparation quiz. Let's take a look at it. It's not a difficult quiz, of course. This is just to make sure that you know what you're doing prior to this. So a lot of the same stuff I'm covering, it's going to have, it only has 5 questions. It's untimed, it's not a lot of stuff to take. If you really want to take it a lot, you can take it up to 99 times. That would be torturous, but you could if you wanted to. So let's just look at it so that you can see what's coming. This course isn't about surprising you. This course is a really great course to prepare you for all the other courses that you're going to take. It's like a bedrock quiz or course. So this is what you're going to see. It asks you to click around on all this stuff that I'm talking about. Make sure that you know how it works. Make sure that you know the difference between the different toolbars. Make sure that you know how to find the Tech Live sections. Make sure you know how to find me. Make sure you know this stuff. So then you'll submit it, right? Okay, so that's really all there is to the course preparation quiz, but do not neglect it. Okay, so we started with the modules. Let's go back there again. Again, you're going to start with this top module, which is getting started. And then you're going to be starting on module 1. So we're just going to walk you through module 1, make sure that everything makes sense to you, make sure that you know where to find everything. If this is your first time, it's mostly intuitive, but you start at the top of module 1 and you work your way down, gives you an overview. I want to address this suggested pacing. The way that the course works, they want us to keep assignments to a minimum as far as number of days. This actually makes better sense, though, if you are doing something every single day for this course and any courses that are online, because the course goes so quickly that you really have all of these different things moving along at a rather rapid pace. So like this first week and all weeks, you really should start on Sunday or Monday at the latest, right? And look at the reading, look at the overview, look at what's due during the week so you can say, okay, what do I have to do? How do I plan this? Okay. And notice that you are always going to have stuff that you need to plan for, right? Whether it's reading something, interviewing someone, watching a video, there's things that you need to look ahead and go, what do I need to plan for? So notice that on Tuesday, you have something due, which is complete journal 2. On Wednesday, you're beginning the drafting of project number 1. All of this stuff you will see as we go through this, so you don't have to remember all this stuff. But notice that on Thursday, journal 1 is due, journal 2 is due, discussion board post is due, right? So these are things that you have to keep in mind. Now the discussion boards, we want to talk through that a minute. The discussion boards themselves, there's 2 parts to it, and you don't want to forget either part. One is the initial post where you post something and then whatever the question is, you post your initial reaction to it. The second part is to respond to other people in the discussion board, right? So both of those things are due for a grade. You can't forget either one of them, your post and your posts on other people's. Okay, so don't forget those 2 things are due. Notice that they're due on different days. Thursday is the initial post. Sunday is when your replies are due. Okay, and here's my thought on that. If you are waiting, so the replies on the discussion board are due technically on Sunday by 11:59, along with other things, project number 1. So if you are waiting to give your responses to your peers until Sunday, especially at Sunday 11:59, when also the other project is due, you're not doing them any good, right? Because the idea is for you to look at their stuff, to give them some feedback. They can look at the feedback and go, oh, that's a good point. Maybe I should change that. they don't have time to do that if you wait until the moment it's due. That makes no sense, right? But that's the way it's scheduled. So if you want to do yourself some good, part of the discussion board posting stuff is that you can get your own thoughts in a row and brainstorm it and put it out there for somebody else to look at, but also then to look at other people's and go, oh, that's how they're doing it, right? I would have, if I'd been in a live class, I probably would have heard this conversation, but since I'm not, I'm going to look at how they're doing it. Look, how do they answer that question, or what are they going to do with this or that? So the discussion board is a way for you to see what other people are actually doing. If you neglect that until Sunday, then again, you're not doing yourself any favors, because you don't have time to look at theirs and go, oh, that's a good idea, I'm going to incorporate that in mine. And also, you're not doing them any favors either, because you're giving them some feedback and then they don't have time to do anything about it. So my suggestion would be to post your initial post by Thursday as required, and then do your peer reviews for other people by Saturday. So at least they have 24 hours to look at yours and go, oh, good questions, let me fix that. Okay, so that's always going to be the case. I'll remind you about it multiple times. All right, so it is a suggested course pacing. There are due dates. Speaking of due dates, as far as late work is taken or accepted, in this particular course, you are allowed to turn work in late up to 1 week, with 2 exceptions. One, discussion boards are not accepted late, because if you're giving feedback to your peers late, it's irrelevant. It doesn't help them. It doesn't help you. So no discussion board grade are accepted late. Okay. They're not the big grades. So if you have a rough week and you need to turn in something else late, like a project, that's the bigger grade. So that's more important, but do keep that in mind. The second exception is, of course, the very last week of the course. So if you want to turn something in late, you can turn it in 1 week late, except for the last week. Once the due date shows up, that last due date, that's kind of the deadline, because I have to turn final grades in, and so you can't turn something in late that week. So keep that in mind. But otherwise, it's summer. You have full-time jobs. So you have kids. Some of you have kids at home right now, right? Oh no. So I know your lives have gotten more complicated. So I get it. I have 3 kids myself, so I definitely get it. All right. So after you are reviewing this first page of the module, notice you have to scroll to the bottom and look for this little button here. Do you see that button? The next button. Okay. So you start at the beginning of the module, you scroll down, and then you have to click next to see what's happening. Now, sometimes, if you haven't been at Indiana Tech for a while, you don't know maybe that you don't have to purchase a textbook. Yay, saves you some cash. All the textbook is embedded within all the modules. Okay, so here is your first reading, and sometimes you'll see it show up like this, and you're like, well, there's nothing there. Well, you have to double click on that so that it pops up. So when you click on it, see if I can find it. It'll look like this. All right, so again, you'll double click on that bar. It'll pop up. Here's your first reading, Introduction to Primary Research, Observations, Surveys, and Interviews. Now, this course has a lot going on. All right, so there's just a lot of things to think about. We will talk through some things that you need to start planning for ahead of time. But you're going to be doing observations, you're going to be doing surveys, you're going to be doing interviews. So you want to be thinking through who and what am I going to observe, and who or what am I going to interview? Who am I going to interview? You'll be thinking that through as we move through this course, but you might want to start already doing a little brainstorming to think through who might I possibly interview that I could ask easily and say, hey, could I do an interview? A phone interview, a Zoom interview, a live interview. Okay. So it'll be really important to do all this reading so that you might know, what does it mean? Right. So what's the difference between primary research and secondary research? So we're going to stop and observe that for just a second. Primary research is when I am going out there and collecting the research myself. So and the examples of those, an observation. So I am observing a group of people who are doing something and I'm writing stuff down. I am creating primary research because I'm there in person, I'm looking at the thing, and I'm making my own observations. A survey is another example of primary research because let's say I want to know maybe something about politics. So I create 5 questions and I send out my survey, and then the answers come back. So I am actually in the process of creating the survey, the stuff, the data. I have done it in a primary sense first. An interview is another really good way of doing primary research because I'm going to go to a person, maybe a person who is involved with something I want to know about, and I'm going to ask them the questions and they're going to answer. So I'm right there creating this primary research. Okay. Secondary research means that somebody else has done the primary research and then written something about it or analyzed it and then written, then I've looked at it. So if let's give you an example. If there's an accident, right? So I'm driving down the road and there's a semi in a car accident. Okay. What are the primary research people? Who are the people? Well, the person who was in the accident, right? So like the person who was driving the truck, the person who was driving the car, those two people are primary to the thing, right? It happened to them. It also there might be people who were there who watched it, right? So those people could also be people who have access to primary information. They saw it. They know what happened because they saw it. Then there's going to be secondary research people. So accident happens, somebody calls the ambulance and the police. The police come to the accident scene and they start asking questions, right? So they are going to be secondary researchers because they're saying, okay, what did you see? Then the person who saw it tells them, right? Okay, so that's the difference between primary and secondary. So you're going to want to read through this carefully because it gives you lots of great examples of how to do it. And you will be doing it at some point very soon. So it's really important to know, what does it look like and how do other people do it and what does it mean and why do I do it? Okay, so again, you'll come back after you finish that. You'll click to next. And here's where you're going to find out what it is you're going to research. Okay. In this particular course, which really is embracing research in all kinds of forms and teaching you how to do it right. As you probably know, our society is having problems with research, right? We're trying to figure out like who are the people who know what they're talking about, who's telling the truth, how does that work? So for you guys to really be involved with it and figure out how it works is really important. So in this course, you're going to be looking at the discourse, community, and culture. So what is a discourse community? Well, a discourse community is, let me read this to you because this is how one researcher defines it. A socially accepted association among ways of using language, of thinking, of acting that can be used to identify oneself as a member of a socially meaningful group or network. So you're involved in many different social discourse communities yourself, and so am I. So that's kind of like as he defines it, an identity kit, right? So like it has sometimes appropriate costumes. So like if I'm going to be in the goth community, I wear something different than if I'm going to be in the pickleball community, right? Those are really different costumes that say I am identified with this group or this group. Okay, so there's lots of different discourse communities, but they all sort of have a different way of talking, reacting with the world, dressing, maybe doing their hair, earrings, whatever. And you are probably part of multiple identities. And so sometimes you go to church and you dress one way, and sometimes you go to a party and you dress somewhere else, right? You know that the identity kit is something that is worth figuring out, right? Okay, so a discourse community then is a social network of some kind. Now, he is not talking about in this way. We're going to talk about this later, but in this case, he's not talking about a social network that's digital. So not Facebook, not Instagram, not LinkedIn. This is a different type of social network that's digital. We're talking about discourse community that's not digital. Okay, in this first way we do this. So it could be any sort of community that you're going to think about. So it could be a class. It could be a bunch of people that ride the bus at the same time. It could be a church. It could be a club. It could be any number of things that identify someone. So, particularly some examples in Fort Wayne. Within Fort Wayne, there are a lot of faith based organizations like Are You Catholic? Are you Protestant? Are you Islamic? There's multiple veteran of foreign war or VFW posts, right? So if you're a veteran and you identify with being a veteran, you might go and hang out there with other veterans. There's also organizations like sports teams, like the Tin Caps or the Comets, or school districts. Maybe if you went to school and your mascot was the tiger, you were a Warsaw Tiger. So you identified with that particular organization or high school, where you might also have gone to a private high school, and then you would have a different identification, right? So there's also in Fort Wayne, there's the north side, the south side, there's Northrop, there's Snyder, there's Wayne, and there's Indiana Tech, right? So yeah, go Warriors, right? So there's this community in 232, right? We are a community of Raiders. They're all focused within the same class. So there's lots and lots of discourse communities that exist everywhere. And you are going to be choosing one. Let's take a look at this video to help you see that a little bit more.
In his book, Beyond Culture, Edward T. Hall developed the iceberg analogy of culture. The cultural iceberg theory suggests that, like an iceberg, there are only some aspects of culture which are visible or which, in other words, lie above the surface of the water. These can include language, food, greetings, art, music, and many others. These are the explicit manifestations of culture. They are easy to see, taste, or hear.
I'm going to pause that just for a second in case you want to take a picture of this, because as you are identifying a social network or organization group that you want to think about, these are some of the things that you might look for. Like, what makes this particular group unique to itself? Well, language, greeting, music, rituals, food, art, dress. Those are some ideas. So if you want to take a picture really quick. Okay.
But according to Hall's theory, these are only the tip of the iceberg. The majority of culture, like an iceberg, lies beneath the surface. These aspects are not immediately visible. They can include worldview, religion, spiritual beliefs, decision-making models, power relationships, respect for authority, concepts of time, and many others. These are the implicit manifestations of culture. They can exert an important influence over behavior, values, feelings, and thoughts.
And I'll stop again so you can take a picture of that whole thing if you want to, and see how those two things go together in this particular model, which is the cultural iceberg. What lies above the surface that you can easily see, and then there's things beneath the surface that you might have to ask questions or dig a little bit deeper to find, right? And might be misinterpreted because they're not as obvious. These are things that you're going to be asking questions about and digging for and trying to understand.
The more immersed we become in a cultural environment, the more these hidden aspects are revealed to us.
All right, now you'll find that video located well, in YouTube, but you're going to find it in several different places. One, you'll find it in this discourse community and cultural handout. Okay. And you'll also find it linked within the module itself right here. So you can see it multiple different places, but since it's really quick, you might want to watch it a couple times till it makes sense to you, right? So as you're trying to figure out this discourse community, here's another reading. Let's see if we can find it. There it is. Okay, so this is the next reading that you have. Again, this is part of a textbook, but since you don't have to pay for the textbook, you have to deal with the advertisements. Yay, right? There's some disadvantages in not having a real book in front of you. So this one is an interesting article that comes from a book called Dakota, A Spiritual Geography by Kathleen Norris. And it's a chapter, and the chapter is titled, Can You Tell the Truth in a Small Town? Now, some of you may be from a small town, and so you understand what that means very well, right? Like if you live in a small town, everybody knows everything about everybody, or thinks they do. And then like you might have done something if you're a kid in one part of town, and by the time you rode your bike home, your mother or father met you at the door and said, what do you mean about this? Like somebody had already told them or called them, right? So a small town is really quick at getting news from one end to the other. It may not be accurate, but the news travels very quickly. So this article kind of talks through a very different type of cultural phenomenon, a small town. Okay, so it gives you an example of a culturally significant group. Okay, so now, next reading, again, you'll have to double click on this little bar here twice, is called Fleet Feet Blog, Finding Our Tribe Inside the Running Community. See if I can find that one. No. There we go. This is a different kind of community. This is a running community. Now, maybe some of you are runners. Or do some sort of sport. And so you know that if you are a runner and you are, if you've been doing it for a little while, you know there's language associated with it, like types of shoes and types of the way your feet fit inside a shoe or wear the shoe. So there's all kinds of really interesting parts of what it means to be part of this community if you want to be part of it. So again, this is another example of a discourse community. So we're giving you some examples of what one looks like, feels like, what kinds of things you might want to ask about if you are actually going to be studying it, which, yes, you are going to be studying it. So let's go back over here. Okay, again, this is the next reading, and then you're going to click on next. You're always looking for that little gray next box. So now that you have read, and obviously I'm not reading those to you, you're going to have to go back and do this reading yourself. You're going to be doing an observation log for Journal 2 and also for Journal 4. So you're going to be doing 2 observation log and reports for this class. The first one is going to look like this. Let's see if I can open it up for you. There we go. Okay, so you're going to use this same template twice. Okay, so what we do is use a double entry notebook for this. It's a way of taking field notes, and you'll find that this is actually rather useful for all kinds of things, not just for this class, but for other things that you might want to examine in your own life. Maybe it's not a discourse community, but maybe it's a work community, or maybe there's a problem that's occurring that you want to try and figure out. So this is what one might look like. This is more of a formal one. So you'll see that you don't necessarily have to do a formal one for everything you might want to think about, but it is a way to synthesize your overall impression of what you saw. Okay, so to focus your attention on a particular thing and then help you to synthesize it or understand it. So what it does is help you to understand the bigger picture of the whole thing, right? To see the small details, but also the big details. So zooming in, zooming out, seeing both. Okay. So your observation log, you'll print it out. or use the computer, either one. You'll fill it out in some manner. You can handwrite it. If you do handwrite something, keep in mind that you can always take a picture and turn it in that way, or scan it and turn it in that way. I'm not trying to make your life harder, so you can do this observation log in any way that it makes sense to you, as long as I can read it or see it. So again, you'll know what is the name of the discourse community. So you might be like discourse community bus riders at 9 o'clock in the morning on bus route X, or discourse community could be gamers at League of Legends at a certain time, or whatever you want to call the discourse community. Give it some sort of information so that we can tell what it is. Who are these people involved? Doesn't have to have people's names. It doesn't necessarily have an official name, but it is the name or the description that you're giving to it. Make sure you write down the date of the observation, time of the observation, and duration of the observation. And here's what you're going to be doing. You're going to have on the left-hand side your observations. What did I see? And on the right-hand side, your thoughts about the observation. Okay, so that's the basic idea of doing a double-sided column here. So again, this is a formal one where you have two columns, but you could do it with a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle too, right? Observations on one side, thoughts on the other. So some examples. So on this side, a student is doing a discourse community, which is the school dining hall. So the observation, the student sits in the dining hall, as pizza, which drips oil, he says to his friend, "This pizza is good." Notice, and this is in orange or red there, that we are not identifying the students by name. We're not trying to get anybody into trouble by whatever you write down. We're just making observations in a general sense of what we're seeing. Okay, student one, student two, whatever. Now that's the observation. I saw the student sit down with a piece of pizza and drip oil and say the pizza's good. Okay, that's all. Now my thoughts are on this side. And the thoughts, of course, are going to vary wildly depending on the person who's writing this down. This particular person said their thought was, it seems like the student really enjoys the high calorie content pizza. So obviously this person is kind of focused on one particular aspect of what they're seeing. So thoughts, observations, thoughts, observations, thoughts. Another example, I observed cash register 1 for 15 minutes. During that time, 22 students paid for meals. Of those 22 students, 15 grabbed a candy bar or granola bar. 3 of the 22 had a piece of fruit. Okay, so that's the observation. The thought about what I saw: fruit is less accessible than candy bars. It's further back in the dining court. Is this why more students are reaching for candy bars? So, that may or may not be correct, right? But again, one is the observation is just what I'm seeing. And the second thought thing might be whatever it is that spurs in you. What is your analysis of the observation? And of course, it's going to vary from student to student what it is. There's not a right or wrong answer. This is just what you'll do. So this is page 1. You're going to have multiple of these. You'll probably have a couple, at least 2 pages of your observations and thoughts, right? So print this out, print out a couple of them, and then remember, you'll be doing it twice for journal 2 and again for journal number 4. Okay, so again, next. Now, review, requirements for project 3. We are only in module 1 currently, but I want you to look ahead to project 3, which is coming later in the course because you're going to have to do some planning. So I want you to see what is coming so that you know what to do. So when you get to that part, you're going to need to have 3 separate things here. One is the project 3 information, one is a reflection on it, and one is a consent form. And that consent form is something you fill out for the person that you're going to interview, which of course means you have to interview someone. So let's open that up. Again, this is later, but I want you to be thinking about it. Okay, so later on in the course, after we've examined things a little bit more and you have a better idea what you're doing and you've seen some examples, you are going to do an oral history interview of a person. And that will be a person probably of a discourse community that you've been looking at or examining throughout the course. So you'll choose a discourse community, bus raiders, community members, optimist members. Maybe it's a club. Maybe it's, pickleballers who play on Tuesday mornings, whatever. So choose a discourse community, develop a research question. So the research question is what comes from those observations and thoughts, right? So maybe the research question is, why do people not eat more fruit? Whatever the question might be that kind of pops up in your thought process. Then you're going to research this community using primary sources, interview, secondary sources, newspaper, whatever, research that finds out stuff about it. You're going to be conducting a 30-minute interview of a person, and this person does need to be willing to be recorded, not for publication, but just for you, because you will be recording their interview and then turning it in for a grade. So thinking about that, when we get there, you'll have some options. We'll talk you through how do I do that and where can I find it and blah, blah, blah. At this point, you just need to be thinking through, one, the discourse community you're interested in developing, right? Do you want to know more about gamers? Do you want to know more about, people who play soccer or cricket? Who knows? Whatever it is that you want to know more about. And then being on the lookout for a person that will be willing to be interviewed. Okay, and eventually you'll be writing a 5 to 6 page essay that will describe the interview, the sources that you find, all the information that you find about it. Okay, so this is, again, just for you to be looking ahead. Again, there will be a consent form. This is the project description and then a reflection on it. Okay, so that's just to tell you what is coming. And then there are always some supplemental readings and resources for you as you start to think this through. Okay. All right, so that would be bringing us to near the end of Module 1. The last thing you're always going to have is a discussion board. The discussion board initial post is usually due on Thursday. So this initial Thursday post is going to be here, right? So number 1, please submit your Project 1 essay rough draft. Okay, so now again, you're thinking this through, right? If you know that by Thursday you have to post your rough draft, that means that you have to probably figure out what the heck Project 1 essay is and write it between now and Thursday, right? Okay. Number 2, you may include questions for your peers to consider. Is this research done well? Did I have a good introduction? Am I doing the format right? Right. So this is the stuff that you're going to want to be doing between now and Thursday. When you get to the part where you have to reply, again, that's scheduled for Sunday, but I highly recommend doing it by Saturday so there's time to think about it. So then you respond to a minimum of 2 of your peers with these questions. Does the author have a clear thesis? Does it meet the assignment requirements? Do the body paragraphs have clear topic sentences? Those kinds of basic things that you learned in basic English classes. But to help your person, in this case 2 people, help them to think through how they could improve. Okay. Okay. Journal 1. So what's the essay you have to do? Let's take a look at this. So journal number 1, you have 10 questions, and you will be thinking this through carefully. Let's look at these 10 questions in your own words. Now, again, when I read these to you right now, you may not know all the answers because you're first going to do the reading, right? Once you do the reading, these answers will be much more understandable to you. So number 1, in your own words, what's the difference between primary and secondary research? We talked a little bit about it. You'll learn more. Number 2, what's the purpose of an institutional review board, IRB? Oh, well, we haven't talked about that, so you better read that one, right? Number 3, in your own words, what's the difference between participant observation and unobtrusive observation? Again, you better read that stuff or you won't know the answer, right? Number 4, what kind of observation will you be conducting? And explain. Number 5, what's a double entry notebook and how are you going to use this method to take notes, right? Make sure that you've read these essays first. So you answer the questions with the right context. Number 6, there are many places in the text where Norris, she's the one that does the small town, discusses the truth and telling lies. What point is she making about the role of truth in a community? Number 7, as the video explains, that's the video, the iceberg one, he developed this iceberg analogy. Apply this analogy to Norris's essay. So like in Norris's essay, what are the parts of the iceberg that are above and what are the parts that are below? I want to know. Number 8, using the 4 communities described on the Discourse, Community, and Culture handout, which of course you have to read, make an exhaustive list of the communities to which you belong. This is, again, helping you to brainstorm which one you want to talk about. Number 9, in your own words, how is running a community? You may want to consult the Discourse, Community, and Culture handout to make sure that you understand the question, because it's kind of vague. Number 10, based on the list you created for question number 8, which community do you think will focus on and why? So again, by the end of journal number 1, we want you to have maybe sorted through all this information, understand discourse community, and understand what you're going to do with it. Okay. So you also have this observation log, which we call journal number 2. And this will be what else you do for this particular assignment. Okay. So you can find it here by clicking on it. You can also find it over in the modules. Okay. Now, one of those questions was Project 1. Which one is Project 1? There's Project 1, Project 3, there's Journal 1, Journal 3. It gets confusing, so make sure you're paying attention to the titles. Okay, this is the first essay. This is the essay that you'll be writing the draft for and putting it into the discussion board. So you will have first read this writing up here. That makes more sense, right? And then you're going to be writing a 2.5 to 3 page essay about a discourse community in which you describe what makes it a discourse community, right? So first you have to choose one, then you're going to tell me, well, this is what it is, and this is why it's one. Is it, are there personal parts that make it a community? Are there geographical, academic, social? Like, what is it that makes this a community and why? You might think through a daily activity that you share with someone. So like, again, studying with a group, taking a bus, working out at the gym is another one. So sometimes a community can be defined by a verb. So like, if I were a runner, right, that's a group of runners, right? So this is the community that I'm going to choose. Perhaps you'll choose whatever one you want to choose. And then you're going to answer the following questions in an essay, right? So again, a draft will go into the discussion board by Thursday, and then you'll edit it and turn it in by Sunday. So in this essay, you'll answer the following questions. What makes the group a community? What holds it together? What interests, needs, and values do the people share? What tensions or differences work about, against this particular community? Why do you fit in? What's your part in this community? And why do you want to be part of it? And how does it impact your life, right? So remember that Indiana Tech's mission is to make your life a life of significance and worth. So we're always thinking through that. We want to think through how this particular discourse community makes your life one of significance and worth, right? So you will be, again, talking through explicit, that's the top of the iceberg, right? The ones that are obvious, and implicit, those are the ones that we have to dig for a little bit more, that we have to ask questions about. You're going to reflect on this membership and why it makes this important to you and why it makes your life better. Okay, so they actually give you some pretty good ideas of how to get started as an example. And then I want to point out this rubric. So all of the major projects in this course give you a rubric. Now, the rubric is really only useful to you if you look at it ahead of time and go, okay, this is how the grade is supposed to happen. And then right before you turn something in, you go back through this with a fine-tooth comb and you ask yourself these questions. Okay, so did I do all these things, right? The idea is for you, as you're going through it, then to say, let's say I get to this one here. The essay was formatted according to APA guidelines. Oh no, I totally forgot about that. I did it in MLA. Oh no, let me fix that before I turn it in, right? So the object with this rubric is to help you before you turn something in so that you can look at this and go, oh, these are like reminders that I should do this, this, and this before I turn it in. So that's really the purpose of this rubric, is to help you get it right. Okay, so do not neglect to take a look at all these things ahead of time, right? Remember, it's due when it's due. And then, by the way, this live tech reflection, you always have one due every week. So you listen to this live tech thing that we're doing. Most of you will probably listen to it recorded. That's the way this works. And some of you will be here live. By the way, those live people, you can jump in with questions anytime you want. So then you're going to do this, I think it's 10 points. Yeah, 10 points for a tech live reflection. My suggestion is to start the reading on Sunday, listen to the recording on Monday or Tuesday, whenever it is, do the reflection right away, and then continue on with the rest of the things. Don't wait until Saturday or Sunday, right? That makes no sense. Okay, so we've come to the end of Module 1. All right, now to kind of cap us off here, I want to play a little bit of a TED Talk that helps you to see why you're doing the things that we're doing here.
Research as an avenue for curiosity. Before we get started, I just wanted to get a couple of definitions out of the way, because there are differing types. So the first kind of research is probably the research that we all think about initially. It's gathering data, finding information on a topic that has a solid knowledge base behind it. So this is the kind of research that we would do if you were going on a trip. So finding information on a hotel or museums that you could go to while you're there. This is also the same type of research that you would do if you were doing a research paper on a historical figure like Thomas Edison. You'd take the time to go check out a book, look at some information on the web, find all of that information. So this is what a lot of us do on a day-to-day basis, but what I want to look at is different. So I want to look at research as an active task. It's pursuing new implementations and ideas to further the field you're working in. So this is taking your curiosity and putting it into action. So this can happen in a lot of different fields, from biology and communication to psychology and computer science. And this is the kind of research that I love. So in addition to being a student here, I've had the opportunity for the past year and a half to work in a lab doing research in machine learning and computer vision. And to give a little bit of context behind what that is, we work with deep neural networks, a form of machine learning, to teach a computer that when we show it a picture of a cat, it should classify it as a cat and not as a dog or a boat or anything in between. So in a broader context, however, I have the opportunity to do meaningful work in and contribute to one of the most relevant and growing fields in today's society. In the past year and a half, after one of my professors saw something in me that I never would have seen in myself, I've had the opportunity to find my passion. I kind of knew it was my passion when I started going home and thinking and eating dinner, and 20 minutes later I'd pull out my laptop and start working again, because I would find a new idea or something else that I wanted to work on, because if my experiment's not running, it's broken and there's something I can do to fix it. Or if I have an idea to how better get information out of that experiment I'm running. So I have the opportunity to work with people who are extraordinarily intelligent every day. They help me to understand the theory behind what we're working on and the big picture impact that our work is going to have. So I always take the stance of assuming that I'm the dumbest person in the room. But I'm learning to ask more intelligent questions and using my curiosity to drive what we are doing and how to better use that in furthering the field. So I definitely know more than I did a year ago. I'm more comfortable with the fundamentals. I no longer stumble over the vocabulary that I read every day, and I'm less intimidated, not completely not intimidated, but less intimidated by the mathematically intensive parts of the papers that I read. But the beautiful thing about it is there's always more research being done. So there's always more papers to read, more vocab to stumble over, my favorite, and there's always new ideas and avenues to pursue because of this. So the difficult part about this is that it's hard. You are never going to have a perfect experiment. You're never going to have an idea. You're always going to have an idea or a project that doesn't work out like you hoped it to. I just got finished working on a project a couple months ago where I'd spent 3 months trying to get it to work, and we were like, I guess it doesn't work at all, so let's move on to the next one. So we do get to learn from this information, though. We always are going to learn something from these so-called failures, and it's often these gaps between the expectations and the actual outcomes of what we're learning that provide us with the anomalies in order to ask another question, to push the field further, shift directions, and continue to work. I have a joke with a lot of my friends that it's a 70-30 split. So we spend 70% of our time banging our heads against the wall and trying to understand the theory behind what we're doing, trying to understand why it's not working, but it's that 30% that keeps us going through that. So it's the 30% of crazy success where your experiments are running, you're getting information out of your experiments, the results are good, and it's just that feeling where you get that in the pit of your stomach because it's working. You're getting what you want. So this 30% is what keeps me going through the 70%, especially when I pair it with the motivation behind what we're doing. So the pursuance of research is the pursuance of knowledge as an active task. So you're finding out new things and new things that didn't exist before. So the field itself is inherently competitive. All of the labs are always vying for that next accuracy jump or the next novel idea that's going to change the field. And that's an opportunity. So we get to use these and force collaboration between them as well, because all of the authors are always willing to answer your questions. They're always willing to facilitate discussions, and they're always interested about your work as well, because something that you say may be the anomaly or the spark that hits in their brain that leads them to a new idea. So underneath all of the competition, we are just people.
I think that hits at the reason why we're doing this. One, curiosity, right? We want to be curious. We want to look outside the box, right? This is useful both in our academic world, but more importantly, in your the rest of your life too, our lives of significance and worth. So that means that we want to include curiosity in understanding of how things work underneath the surface and on top, the obvious, the explicit, and also the implicit in all walks of what we do. So with that, is there anyone here who would like to ask a question before we end? Okay, it's been a pleasure to have you in this very first inaugural meeting, and I look forward to many more of these meetings. I do want to say welcome to all of you one more time, and thank you for coming.